Okay, so now we're going to try our second example of a Lewis structure. We finished ammonium in our first video. Now we're going to try carbon dioxide. Okay, we're going to follow the same procedure for all of these. Okay, total up our valence electrons, find our central atom, and then build our molecule around the central atom, and then make sure that we follow the octet rule and the duet rule for hydrogen. Okay, so first step, we have carbon and oxygen. Separate your elements. Okay, total up your valence electrons. So you have 1 carbon, and carbon has 4 valence electrons. Okay, you have 2 oxygens, and oxygen has 6 valence electrons. Okay, 4 times 1 is 4, so a total of 4 valence electrons for carbon. 2 times 6 is 12. 12 valence electrons for oxygen. Add them up. So add them up. That gives you 16 valence electrons. So we have 16 electrons to work with in this Lewis structure. Okay, what's going to go in the middle? The least electronegative element, or in this case, because it's binary, just the first element that you see, which is carbon. Okay, so you'll put carbon as your central atom, and then bond each oxygen to carbon. Okay, you want to make your molecules sort of have some sort of symmetry. Okay, so 1 oxygen on the right, 1 oxygen on the left. Okay, so now we've got those 2 covalent bonds. That represents 4 electrons, 2 and 2. So we still have 12 electrons to work with at this point. Now we just have to make sure that we have an octet. All right, so I'll just start putting lone pairs around the oxygen and see what happens. So 2, 4, 6. Okay, so that oxygen now has an octet. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, the carbon we'll leave alone for just a minute, or let's just fill in the carbon. It doesn't really make a difference. Okay, I'll put lone pairs around the carbon. Okay, so let's see what our total of electrons is now. You've got 8 electrons around oxygen, okay, plus the lone pair for carbon, that's 10, 12, and then around the oxygen you've got the 1 pair of shared electrons. Right now we've used up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 electrons. So if we put the other lone pair around oxygen, it's not quite going to work, because we have an octet around oxygen and around the carbon, but we do not have an octet around the last oxygen. We only have 4 electrons. So we're going to have to redistribute some of these lone pairs. Okay, so usually when you don't have enough valence electrons to just make octets with lone pairs, that should be a hint that you're going to need to have a double or a triple bond. Okay, so here, let's satisfy our octet rule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that lone pair and make it into a double bond there. Okay, so that means that lone pair is gone now. And now that left you with a double bond. Okay, I'm going to take this lone pair here and make that into a double bond there. And now, okay, that lone pair goes away because now it's double, it makes your double bond with carbon. Okay, so let's see where we are now with our electrons. We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. We still have our 16 electrons, but does each of our atoms have an octet? Well, not quite. Okay, that first oxygen now has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 electrons. The carbon has an octet, and then the oxygen only has 6, the second oxygen. So we're going to have to move one of those lone pairs from this oxygen to the other oxygen to get our octets. I'll just take that one. So we're going to move this lone pair to that oxygen. Okay, now fix that. Okay, this lone pair goes away. And now let's see where we stand. How many electrons do we have in our Lewis structure? We've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. Okay, so we still have our 16 valence electrons that we had to work with. Now we have to make sure each element meets the octet rule. So for oxygen, you got 2 lone pairs, so that's 2, 4, and then you've got a double bond, that's 6 and 8. Remember, each bond, each covalent bond, each line represents a pair of electrons. Okay, so that oxygen has 8. The carbon in the middle, it has 2 sets of double bonds, so, or one, yeah, 2 sets of double bonds, so you got 2, 4, 6, 8. That one has an octet. And then our last oxygen, 2, 4, 6, 8, also has an octet. So now, it looks like we are finished. Each atom has an octet, and we've used up all our valence electrons. So we're done with that Lewis structure. Okay? Let's try the last example in our last video.